Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. On this week's show, we're playing Paranormasight, the Seven Mysteries of Honjo. That is a mouthful.
That's a long one.
Fade to Black and New Super Lucky's Tale.
Ooh. How is Paranormasight related to Paranorman? I assume it's just a spin-off.
I wish. That would be fantastic, because I really like Paranorman. That is one of my favorite kids' movies.
Really?
And, yeah. Yep.
How come you never talked about the Paranorman game on here?
There's a Paranorman game?
I assume there must be, right?
I've not done the research on this, DJ. You started this conversation.
All right. Well, I thought that's what this was.
I would put that on my short list with like The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline as like cool, spooky kids movies.
I was going to say, is Coraline a kids movie? Like, it kind of looks like it, but isn't that terrifying?
It is. It's a little terrifying. Yeah.
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 I mean, so were a lot of kids movies when I was growing up. They just didn't tell you.
Right. Yes.
Like that whole thing in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, yeah.
When they're on the boat. Like, how is that about?
Mm-hmm. Is it raining? Is it snowing?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Or are you old enough to appreciate The Secret of Nim?
I never caught that one.
Okay. Or Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal is pretty. Both of those.
I mean, I wasn't exactly like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is a little before my time.
That's true too.
But
yeah.
Everybody sees that one.
Is also timeless. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, deeply disturbing kids movies. Anyways, what a way to start the show.
Yeah.
It's not even our spooky Halloween episode.
No. Whoa. We were jumping ahead a little bit.
Let's throw away this whole outline and start new with I don't know, scary kids movies.
Ooh. It was not even scary kids games. I was trying to get back into the streaming life so they don't cancel my Twitch account. But I remembered I had all these spooky games I wanted to play, so I'm desperately trying to make time for that. So maybe we'll do some midsummer spooky shows. Who knows?
Oh, excellent. I feel fairly committed to jumping into Resident Evil Biohazard this summer for my backlog attack. So at the very least, the backlog attack is going to get spooky.
Excellent. Looking forward to
assuming that a Resident Evil game is capable of being spooky.
The Biohazard one looks spooky.
Yeah, it looks
spookier than the other ones.
Kind of grungy and scary. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say though, the Resident Evil 4, both the original and the remake, certainly had sections where it was quite spooky. I know they get sort of a reputation for really doling out the ammunition after a certain point in those games, but there's that whole section in 4 where you're just in that castle and the weird cultists wandering around and they're just murmuring things under their breath the whole time. It's pretty unnerving.
Oh. I didn't get that far, but that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, well, like I said, once you've made it through the rest of your Resident Evil backlog, I hope you give that 4 remake a shot, because there's some good stuff in there.
Play it for slightly more than an hour and report back. Yeah. Cool. All right. So what else is going on in the world?
Oh, who knows? Try not to look outside these days.
The world of gaming, DJ. Let's keep it focused, please.
Oh, the world of gaming?
Yeah.
What is going on in the world of gaming? It's been a while since they canceled E3. I feel like that's not even the headline anymore. What happened this week?
I mean, honestly, E3 was canceled a long time ago. But
yeah, it's true. Depending on who you ask. That Zelda game came out.
I mean, kinda, sure, depending on who you ask.
Depending on where you shop.
Yep. That's the whole theme of this episode, is depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is streaming in some corners of the internet. It's I knew at some point I was going to have to dodge potential spoilers from Tears of the Kingdom, but I didn't think it was going to happen this early.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, now we're in it. We're in the danger zone. Does this happen with a lot of games for you? I feel like, I don't play new games, so it's not an issue for me so much. But whenever there's like a Final Fantasy expansion or whatever else I'm into, I will be careful about which YouTube channels I duck into. Although
Yeah.
they're actually very good about leaks. There's not been a lot of like spoilery leaks about that game that have come out.
Aren't you the guy that sort of stays up until whatever time it launches in the middle of the night and downloads it right away?
For the expansion, no. But I
No?
do get up at like 7 a.m.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you don't want to stay up all night because then you're just exhausted.
Then you're too tired to appreciate it.
Yeah, so, get up early, have a good breakfast, and then you got the whole day ahead of you to just be disgusting and be online.
That is my plan for May 12th.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, are you doing the midnight thing for that? Is there a midnight thing for Zelda? That's the May 12th thing for the uninitiated.
Yes, I've seen posts on Twitter and Reddit that some places like Best Buy and GameStop here in the U.S. are doing midnight launches, and I inevitably sort of go, when was the last time I did a midnight launch for a video game? Like, standing in line waiting for a physical copy. But I'm going digital for Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm not sure when that'll launch. If history is any indicator, it's usually 9 p.m. Eastern time, the day before for Nintendo games.
Wait, 9? Are you sure it's not 9 p.m. Pacific? Because that would make it midnight Eastern, right?
Yeah, that's true. That would make it 6 o'clock your time.
I was like, that'd be very early.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but
Animal Crossing had a midnight launch, right?
I don't remember.
I
didn't play that game. That's a game for babies.
You did play Animal Crossing. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I feel like there were people who were a day ahead of other people for, somehow, so they must have gotten in on before the 8 a.m. reset or whatever it is in that game.
I think you're right, but yeah, at some point the night before, I don't know that I would like stay up until the sun comes up to play Zelda. I go to bed at a reasonable hour, get up at my normal time, call in sick to work, and feed Roscoe, make myself coffee, and then get disgusting, as you say.
Yeah, I gotta do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also been informed that it's Mother's Day weekend and that I have to make an appearance. So I need to enjoy as much of that Friday release day as I possibly can, because of the rest of the weekend I will inevitably have family responsibilities.
Oh, your mom's not going to the midnight launch? What's her plan?
She's going to tag along with me and pick up her own copy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe she's going digital. I don't know how savvy she is.
I have, in my entire life, have never seen my mother play a video game. So,
well, maybe Tears of the Kingdom is the one.
This is her entry into the world of gaming.
Yeah. I feel like this could not be a worse choice for somebody's introductory game.
She always seems sort of like mildly displeased that was my hobby of choice as a child. So, I mean, she encouraged it. She bought my first Xbox. She bought my first PlayStation. So those were Christmas presents that she gave me. But it could very well just be that she doesn't know anything about me.
I was going to say, getting some mixed signals. Like,
yeah.
I'll cut you this new thing that I hate when you use it.
The internet says all the kids are into the Xbox now. Yeah. No, I don't. So yeah, my dad, I guess I've memories of my dad playing Nintendo games as a kid, NES games. I have a very vivid memory of him sitting on the edge of the couch with a light gun shooting ducks in Duck Hunt.
Oh yeah. Duck Hunt, real crowd pleaser.
Yeah, I think it's pretty accessible, right? But my mom was an enigma. Just never really never had the itch. Could never rope her into it. We had a good like a board game night. We'd play board games as a family, but could never pull her into playing a video game with us.
We tried one of those like video board games. I mean, back in the day they were less common, but now we got like Mario Party and what's the I don't know how long it's been since the last like Dragon Quest Final Fantasy thing. But maybe that's not quite the right audience. Yeah,
I don't know that there was that much of that when I was still at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a while, obviously, since my mother and I lived under the same roof. So, there was not a ton of that that I recall as a kid.
Yeah.
So, So yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, that's what it's called, is out there in the universe. So consume internet at your own caution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In general, just a good recommendation.
Right, sure. Yeah. Although it was cool last week when the press previews of Zelda were finally starting to hit kind of on the same day. It's been about a week at this point, and it seemed like everybody was at the same event and played the same chunk of the game. So it was cool to kind of go from, Polygon to IGN to, what's the other one? Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Is that what it's called? Rock, Paper, Shotgun, right?
Yeah. Were they doing Zelda? I thought they were, I guess they do console stuff too.
Maybe it wasn't them. Who's the other one? Destructoid. That's the other one. The only 3 video game sites on the internet.
Right.
And that just to sort of see them all play more or less the same chunk of Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm not sure if you've consumed this, DJ. I know that you're generally a little more disciplined about what you take in advance of a video game release than I can be. But there's like a siege essentially on a Bokoblin outpost that Link is doing, and he has a number of tools and a number of ways to sort of break in, and all hell kind of breaks loose, and they send all their forces at him. And everybody who demoed it kind of approached it in a slightly different way. So it was kind of cool to see like 3 or 4 different approaches to the siege on the outpost from 4 different video game players' perspectives. And I sort of justified to myself, well, it's probably like 1% of the overall game. What am I really spoiling for myself?
Yeah.
But yeah, again, just kind of neat to sort of see this game that is essentially a sandbox, and if we all have the same tool set, how do we approach these things? So it was, kind of fun to see everybody approach it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I like that. That was one of my favorite sort of aspects of Breath of the Wild, is that it was the first like sandboxy video game that really did feel like a sandbox. At least I can't remember the last one that I had played where it felt like you had all these different approaches to things. But it was just so fun talking about, how did you deal with this thing? And watching ridiculous YouTube clips of like people. I mean, you can really even like build things in that game, but like the stuff that people would do with the physics powers.
People found a way. Yeah.
Yeah, like catapulting rocks across ravines and launching Link into space and all that stuff. It's pretty impressive. Stuff that I had not really considered was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I maybe I'm less creative than other video game players, but there was a lot of Breath of the Wild consumption that I was doing where sort of like, I didn't know you could do that. Where did that come from? I didn't know you could do that either. And yeah, there definitely seems to be sort of like maybe an attempt on Nintendo's behalf this time around to kind of embrace that and really just kind of go crazy with some of these abilities.
Yeah, that's actually been kind of a surprise to me. Like, I still don't really know a lot of concrete details about this, but I get the impression that they're really leaning into more of the like experimental sort of emergent side of things, which I think is cool. It's kind of not an expected move from Nintendo.
Right.
I don't know if they ever made another game like that, or sort of that approach other than, Breath of the Wild. But it certainly wasn't it didn't feel like it was the goal of that game to get people to just come up with these crazy sort of ad hoc tricks. Yeah,
I think that was, in a lot of ways, I felt like that was just the community kind of like trying to bend it till it breaks in a lot of ways. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see sort of in Tears of the Kingdom now that all of that stuff is essentially kind of legalized. It's canon now, right? It's like built into the game and in a way that feels much more deliberate than maybe it did the first time around. If it still feels as fresh, as fun, as like, crazy sense of discovery as it sometimes did in Breath of the Wild.
Well, I think it's, really looking forward to seeing just what people come up with, but also what tools Nintendo provides. Because now it's kind of reminding me of like the journey with Mario Maker. Like with Mario Maker 1, they had this, like, basically the tool set you would expect from, a custom Mario Builder game. But by the time Mario Maker 2 came out, I feel like they had more of an expectation for what people were going to do or what sort of levels they wanted to build. So there were all these crazy new ideas in there. I wonder if that's like the closest comparison. to
That's
Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. It's just like, oh, they've seen what the fans can come up with when you just give them a toolbox and let them go crazy with it. So here are some more tools, and let's see what they do with them this time around.
Cool. Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. That I've never played Mario Maker or one of the Mario Maker games, so I've never.
Oh, really?
That would have never occurred to me. No, I've played some of
get on one of those.
I've never played any of the levels. I've seen, YouTube compilations of the craziest Mario Maker levels and things like that, and that always seems very fun. I find sometimes that I get, you get like a Little Big Planet, and I like all the Little Big Planet games.
Yeah, or Little Big Planet, exactly.
But anything that has like a level editor in it, I'm like, I don't know if I'm this person. I think like maybe I'm not that creative, maybe I'm not that patient.
Yeah, I'm definitely
both.
not.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about Mario Maker is that you can just have it like load up a random Mario level that someone's made. It's like, oh, here's a new Mario level that I've never seen before. What's the hook with this one? Just kind of a fun little Mario roulette kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I knew that was in there.
Yeah. Well, you're not really into the 2D Marios as much, though, so maybe if they made a 3D Mario Maker, that would certainly be something.
This is true. I have a lot of hours invested in 3D Mario games at this point, so way more than 2D. So yeah, you're probably not wrong. Cool. So to your point, we are less than 2 weeks away from Tears of the Kingdom at this point, which I keep wanting to call Tales of the Kingdom.
Tales of the Kingdom, yeah.
That's a different thing.
Super Lucky's Tale of the Kingdom.
New Super Lucky's Tales of the Kingdom, yeah. So, yeah, the countdown is on. We should mention to our listeners that if you are planning to get on board the Zelda train pretty early, you can join our Discord. You can hang out with us in our newly anointed Zelda channel and chat about your progress, chat about fun discoveries. Hopefully we try very hard to keep it spoiler free from each other and preserve each other's sort of fun journey through the game. But we wanted to create a little place where we could sort of dump all of our thoughts and feelings and emotions and enthusiasm for the new Zelda game. So yeah, drop by our Discord. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com and hang out with us and chat about Zelda things.
Yeah, I will just be muting that out of like an overabundance of caution. So I'll trust everybody's behaving themselves, and I'll check in after a month and see what the state of that channel is.
Yeah. Our community is very well behaved, generally quite considerate.
That's true.
Yes. Yep.
Haven't really had to moderate anybody, which is nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to hang out with adults sometimes.
Yeah.
So what have you been playing lately? What is your Tears of the Kingdom appetizer plate consist of, DJ?
Oh, at this point, who knows? I went really into the weeds this week. I've been on kind of like a flashback kick for the last couple of weeks because of Lunark.
Yeah.
Just reminding me of that game. And then, I don't know if I talked about this on the show, but they released a new trailer for Flashback 2, which I had forgotten was in development. They're making a sequel to Flashback, which is I think a 31-year-old game at this point.
A legacy sequel, I believe they call that.
Yeah, right. So it's coming out later this year. So between that and Lunark, I was like, man, everybody's talking about Flashback for some reason in 2023. So I've been reading a lot about Flashback, just thinking about it a lot. I have whatever version they had ported to the Switch, I've been playing through again just because I felt like going back to it after Lunark. And then I kind of remembered that at one point they did make a Flashback 2, like they already made a sequel to this game, except it wasn't called Flashback 2, it was called Fade to Black, and it came out in 1995, and it was a PC game at first. I think it had a couple of console releases at some point. And my computer, I think probably my dad's computer at the time, was really not in the greatest shape to play a cutting-edge 3D action game. So as excited as my brother and I were to play a new Flashback game right when this came out, to see the continuing adventures of Conrad Hart from Flashback 1, playing the actual game, playing Fade to Black on a 1995 era PC was not an incredible experience, so I didn't make it too far into that thing. But I've always been kind of curious about it. And like I said, they ported it to a few other things. It ended up on PlayStation 1, and I think Dreamcast?
wow.
Eventually. I just discovered that doing some like random internet research this weekend. And I thought, generally this game is not very well regarded, but I want to give it another look because it's been almost 30 years at this point. So this weekend, I play a little Fade to Black. I managed to scrounge up a copy of the PS1 version after... It's so old at this point. It's like on a bunch of abandonware sites, like the PC version. So my original goal was, figure out how to get that up and running. And after about 5 minutes of looking into what that would entail, I was like, well, I'll just play the PS1 version instead. That seems easier. So I did it. I played a little bit of it. This is such a weird game. So first of all, it's a direct sequel to Flashback, which concluded in kind of a cliffhanger, which was like a shock at the time. Because, spoiler warning for Flashback, you spend the whole game trying to get to the bottom of this alien conspiracy, and at the end of it, you go to the alien's home planet, and you destroy the psychic brain at the center of the planet or whatever is going on. And then you get into an escape pod, and you can't figure out how to get back to Earth, so you just put yourself into suspended animation, indefinitely, which is kind of a downer ending for a video game at the time. But also very cool in a weird sci-fi kind of way. So Fade to Black picks up your escape pod has been retrieved somehow by the evil alien race in the first one, the Morphs. Called Morphs because they can shapeshift into humans or any other form. And they just throw you into prison where you're immediately contacted by some sort of resistance cell who is fighting the Morphs on Earth, and they found you. This is 50 years later, because you've been floating in space a long time, and they're breaking you out of prison. And you're contacted by this guy who's wearing the Ozzy Osbourne sunglasses, and he's got his little 90s soul patch. And he introduces himself, and he's like, I'm the resistance contact, John O'Connor. And you're like, I'm just you gotta be kidding me with this. It's just the most ridiculous sort of mid-90s PC game. But that really sort of sets the tone for the rest of the game. It's not Citizen Kane by any means.
It doesn't really look like Flashback, right?
It doesn't look like Flashback at all. That's the other thing.
It's a 3D over-the-shoulder shooter?
Yeah, it's basically a third-person shooter. Whereas Flashback was, not an action game, not really a platformer, but kind of like a puzzle 2D adventure game with some questionable action sequences. But this one, I don't know why they made this decision, but it's in full 3D. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of an over-the-shoulder perspective. Except in a few cases, it will actually change to sort of the Resident Evil style, static camera angle. To create some drama, I suppose. Which is kind of a too dubious effect in this game. But man, it's just such a shift. It's so weird. I don't even remember what my reaction was when I first learned that this was what they were doing with the sequel to Flashback. And it's also weird because what other 3D action games was I playing in 1995? I don't think any. Because clearly I'm not playing them on this PC because it's not cut out for it.
Right.
And there's nothing on the Super Nintendo, which would have been what I was playing stuff on the time. The PS1, I think it just come out, was it 1995 or 1996? I don't remember. So kind of weird that this game even existed. Because it essentially is just a third-person shooter. There's not a whole lot of platforming going on in this compared to Fade to Black, or compared to Flashback. You're mostly running around these maps, trying to find switches to open doors, and occasionally shooting at morphs in an incredibly awkward, 1995-ish shooter interface. This was before Quake, I think. Wasn't Quake 1996?
That sounds right, yes.
Yeah, so it's still very much in... I mean, it reminds me a lot of just playing Doom. Because you'll be running around, and then when you do have to shoot at something, you draw your gun and you go into an even tighter over-the-shoulder perspective. And then you can't even really aim up and down with your gun. You just aim left and right, and no enemies ever appear above or below you, so it's fine. But it feels so so primitive compared to any other, especially any modern shooter.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's clearly not built for a modern controller.
Yeah. Well, as I was playing this, I was like, do I need to set up the analog sticks for this? I don't think those existed when this game came out, so
Probably not,
I'm not going to worry about it. So yeah, that's the basic setup. As I discovered, it wasn't really the fault of my dad's PC at the time. It's not a very good game. It's not a great action game. It's still very clunky, and a lot of that is probably just because nobody knew how to make a 3D game like this at the time, so they just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hoped that it turned into a video game.
Right.
But it's interesting how many sort of design sensibilities it shares with Flashback, where there still are a lot of puzzle elements. You do have to go to a bunch of different rooms and throw switches to open doors and collect keys to open doors in other rooms. There's significantly more action, I feel like, than there was in Flashback. And again, it's not great. Been replaying Flashback, like I said, and the action is not that game's strong suit. And in this one, it's not either, despite looking like a third-person shooter at times. So luckily, I was making very good use of the quick save, quick load feature on the emulator I was using to sort of deal with some of the action sequence frustration.
Oh, interesting.
But I found the longer I played it, I was thinking I could actually see myself getting into this. I could deal with the frustration that came out of just dealing with the quirkiness of Flashback, not really existing somewhere between being an action game and a puzzle game. I got a little more used to the controls and the way Conrad handles, and just the way you have to deal with enemies when they pop up, just because the combat is so awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like most of the struggle turned into just navigating the levels in this game, because it's broken out into, I think, 12 or 13 levels. They are not incredibly huge compared to something like Doom or Quake even, but all you have to use for reference really is this little mini map in the corner. I couldn't figure out how to bring up an overall map of whatever facility you have to be in at the time, so I just found myself going in circles and taking elevators between floors and trying to figure out whenever something unlocks. It's you just unlocked the door in the south corridor. And I was great. I don't have a compass, so where is that? Which door is that referring to? Which floor is that on?
My south or your south?
Right. Are you in Australia? Who knows? So I was oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just go to GameFAQs and grab one of the maps somebody has inevitably made for this game. And then, to my great surprise, there are no maps. Nobody decided this game was worth enough of their time to create any maps of the levels in this. In fact, there's only one walkthrough I could find on the entire internet.
Wow.
Just some thankless guy decided to sit down and write a guide for Fade to Black.
Well, there's an opening here. There's an unfulfilled need for
Yes,
Fade to Black maps.
There's an opportunity to get the first Fade to Black maps out there.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
To really sort of distinguish yourself as a gamer.
But I really thought oh, that's the real sign that, just how niche this game was. It doesn't even exist on GameFAQs. Nobody somehow dumped the map from it, or just people weren't into it, I guess.
Maybe it was limited by not calling it Flashback 2 : Fade to Black.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember if I discovered that they were making a sequel to this, or making a sequel to Flashback, or if I discovered that Fade to Black was actually a Flashback sequel, because I think they've got Conrad on the box, and he's wearing his incredibly simultaneously generic but also very recognizable outfit from Flashback 1. He's got the brown leather jacket and kind of 90s blue jeans. I was just that looks like the Flashback guy. Is it? Oh, it is. Weird.
No one's ever worn a leather jacket and blue jeans in a video game since.
Well, there was some other game where, I mean, the guy in Lunark was just like this for obvious reasons, but
right.
There was some other game where somebody was in a very similar outfit and I couldn't shake it. I was why is this guy cosplaying as the Flashback guy? So I forgot what I was saying about this being a sequel. It's very weird that this exists. Eventually I got kind of frustrated with it because it's just so awkward. Maybe I would have fared better in 1995 when it was a little more fresh and I hadn't had 30 years of action games and 3D shooters to spoil me.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So eventually I just decided I would watch all the rest of the FMV clips in the game, because this was also during that time where, everything was on CD-ROM, and it was cool to have just like these crappy looking FMV clips in your game as often as possible. Yeah, so like whenever you die, or occasionally at the end of the level, there'll be a little clip of, or like a cutscene of what happens. And man, it was great just going through all of the like little 3 or 4 second clips of Conrad getting killed by all sorts of things. Like here's one where he gets shot, and here's one where a giant lizard stabs him, or he gets like doused in some kind of acidic goo. Really took me back to my Sierra adventure game days. But at that point, I was just like, I've experienced enough of this game. I've made my peace with probably never playing the entire thing from start to finish. But I got enough of a sense of it. I don't know if I want to say appreciate it, but I have a better understanding of what this game is about.
So does any of this sort of make you at all interested in a 2023 legacy sequel to the original Flashback?
Well, I mean, I would love another Flashback that's good, but the stuff I've seen from Flashback 2 so far is very confusing. They just released, this is sort of what kept my interest going after Lunark. They released a gameplay trailer.
Right.
Quote unquote gameplay trailer, because it was very, very difficult to actually see what was going on in the trailer. And just watching it, it's like, I couldn't tell. It didn't really look like the classic sort of stuff you're doing in Flashback. There was maybe one sequence where you see him like jumping up and pulling himself onto a ledge. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's the thing you do in Flashback.
That's all you do in Flashback.
I mean, it's a lot of what you do. Incidentally, I don't think I pulled myself onto a single ledge in the levels I played in Fade to Black, so maybe that's a sign. But then for the rest of this trailer, it looks like he's just running around in full 3D. He's shooting maybe a machine gun? I don't know.
There's a lot of shooting. Yes, I remember that.
At one point, I'm just like, what is this, like Smash TV? Like, why is he doing so much shooting? Because, Flashback to me is not an action game. So I don't know if that's just the direction they're trying to go with this.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily like writing it off just because they decide to take this in a different direction, or even if it's in a different perspective, like that's fine. That's just a new thing for the series.
It is like it's 2D, 3D, right? It is a side-scrolling kind of platforming adventure.
Yeah, it's like rendered in 3D, if
right,
that's what you mean. Like New Super Mario Brothers or whatever.
There you go.
But some sections, it looks like he actually is running around on a 3D map. So I don't know if it like switches back and forth for different sequences. Not sure what to make of it. So it's a confusing trailer. And then based on just recent projects by this developer, I'd say my confidence isn't incredibly high. Like he produced, or I think he actually directed the Flashback 2013 remake, which I also...
Which nobody likes.
No, it's like, it wasn't very good. It like really leaned more into the action elements, which were, not terrific. They made a lot of artistic and writing decisions that I didn't really agree with, and that's very subjective. But I, didn't think that was a great like remake. So we'll see where Flashback 2 ends up. I think it's hilarious that I've seen so many articles saying like, oh, they're finally making a sequel to that 1993 whatever like Amiga game Flashback, and I was like, guys, they made one, just nobody knows about it.
And scroll down to DJ in the comments going, guys.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I don't think it's, probably a lot of people are trying very hard to forget that Fade to Black exists.
You're not out there spreading the good word of Fade to Black.
Yeah. No, I'm just out there like, hey guys, it's as bad as they say, so probably don't play this one.
Yeah.
I do like that the Flashback 2 does seem to veer closer to the original formula. So, we'll see. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic for it. Can you be cautiously pessimistic? I'm not super looking forward to it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I thought it looked like fun, but I don't have a horse in this race. I've no loyalties to Flashback. I thought the new one kind of looked like Shadow Complex, which is a game that is more of a again, like rendered in 3D, but it's a 2D Metroidvania style kind of platformer that I really liked, and unfortunately never begot any sequels. And I got strong Shadow Complex vibes from that Flashback 2 trailer. So I was like, oh, maybe that'll be something I enjoy. But yeah, I have never played more than a minute or two of the original, I think. So
yeah, I could see that connection. It's definitely less of an action game than Shadow Complex was. That's more or less as a straight up Metroidvania kind of experience.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And occasionally a shooter with giant boss battles and things like that. So
yeah. Oh, I forgot there were bosses in that thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be really curious to see how this ends up. It's still just astounding that they're even making a Flashback 2. I'm just like, who is this for? Like, there's so many ports of the original Flashback at this point. I think fans can just go back and enjoy those, hopefully.
Somebody owns the rights and they're trying to get their money's worth.
I guess. But anyway, I finally sated my curiosity about Fade to Black and just put that one to rest.
Excellent. So, hard pivot here to new Super Lucky's Tale.
Oh, yeah. Practically the same game.
Yeah. So my, how did I arrive at this game? So, I think I had mentioned previously on the show that when I went on vacation in February, I was itching to play a 2D, 3D platformer. So I did a lot of like Reddit search for like, what's the best platformer on the Switch or on the Steam Deck that I can take on vacation with me.
Okay. So we're actually ours just slowly veering back towards Flashback.
Platformers, sure. And it all sort of came back to Super Mario Odyssey is, the gold standard. A game I adore, a game that I chose to revisit at that time and have now put just dozens and dozens of hours into. I've gotten to a point in Super Mario Odyssey now where I really have like one or two things left in every world that I need to find, and it's just such a pain in the butt to find them. I spent a Saturday sitting on the couch with like IGN open on my phone and my Switch with me, trying to find 2 purple coins that I could not find anywhere. And you go through a checklist style because you can't. I don't know what coins I found and which coins I didn't, so I had to find every coin again until I could find 2 that I had not. So I'm at that point now in nearly every world in Odyssey is that there's 1 or 2 things left to find, and I just need to like devote myself 24 hours a day to sitting there with an FAQ trying to reverse engineer my way back to the thing that I missed, so that I can hit 100%. That has taken some of the fun out of just sort of wildly playing Super Mario Odyssey at this point. So I'm like, what other platformers are out there for me to enjoy? Back in February, I also downloaded a new Super Lucky's Tale, which is it's new because it's a remake of a game that came out like 4 or 5 years ago.
It's not a remake.
It's kind of an updated and expanded version of Super Lucky's Tale, which I didn't play back in the day. It's kind of fun. It's cute. It's tough to play this back to back with Mario Odyssey. But so let me set the stage here is, new Super Lucky's Tale. You are a little fox, who's just cute, just adorable. Very much sort of cut from the vein of like 90s mascot platformers.
Mm-hmm.
He has lots of fun little costume changes that you unlock over the course of the game. He's got a pretty kind of robust move set of kind of fun moves you can do and double jumps, and he can burrow underground, which I don't think I thought was a thing that foxes do.
Yeah, that's they got the little like foxhole thing.
Oh,
right?
That's where the phrase foxhole comes from.
Is it? I don't know. I might have just made that
up. But it's like Bugs Bunny. He sort of like dives underground, and there's a little pile of dirt that like creates a line on the ground.
Well, I don't know if that's
fun.
something they do.
And it looks like it looks like Bugs Bunny, but it's they use it for like puzzle platforming challenges and a way to avoid enemies. There's stealth levels in this where you have to burrow underground, which is kind of fun. And there's a book of ages that pages have been ripped out of, and you have to travel through time to different worlds to restore the book. So you're collecting pages in all of these levels, trying to glue this book back together. And it's kind of fun. You meet kind of, cute, eccentric characters, all very cartoony, all very sort of like carved from the same cloth as things like Spyro the Dragon. Yeah, it has pretty strong 90s platformer vibes, which is cool, which is nice. I like games like that. I love Spyro games. I played all of those back in the day. It's it lacks kind of the depth of something like an Odyssey or even like Spyro. There's really no like hidden levels. There's really no like secrets to unlock. Occasionally you find a collectible that's hidden behind some like surprisingly difficult platforming challenge, but those are super rare. And I'm sort of left at the thought, maybe about halfway through this game, that maybe this is too easy for me. Which is not an impression I get in video games very often. Or that maybe I'm not the target audience, in that I've just come out of trying to 100% Super Mario Odyssey, which at that level is like a pretty extreme platforming challenge.
Well, yeah, I was thinking like you must be like an expert at Mario Odyssey at this point. How can you go from that into like anything else?
Yeah, it is really hard to do that and to find it satisfying. As I'm sort of progressing through New Super Lucky's Tale, I am 100%ing every single level in it just on the first try, on the first blush.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes.
So, yeah, I was complaining to Sarah, like, geez, this game feels really simple after playing Mario. And she's like, well, it looks like a kid's game. And I kind of I mean, Mario kind of also looks like a kid's game, but
sure.
I'm left with the impression that, yeah, maybe this is for children.
She's like, the box here says early childhood.
Exactly. Suitable for 8 and up. And in that scenario, I am definitely the up. So yeah, it's charming. It's funny. There's some cute little one-liners and stuff in it. Lucky's just an adorable little fox with fun moves. It's very playable. The worlds are great. It's super vivid. It definitely has a very bright and cheerful color palette. There's never really any stress in it. All the villains of the game are cats who are also some other thing. So there's a cat that's a witch, and there's a cat that's a ninja. And
are all the stages in this like based on iconic eras from throughout history, since you got this time traveling book or whatever?
Like revisionist. So like you go back to like not like, I guess maybe not a time, but a place where like everything's down on the farm, but all the farmers are worms. They're giant worms. Oh. And they wear cowboy hats, and they have like a little straw hanging out of their mouth, and they call you partner and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's not necessarily history. It's just like, like kind of little stereotypical little themes. I imagine as I get further into the game, there's probably an ice world somewhere. There's probably an underwater level, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of checks the boxes for a platformer.
Okay, I mean, that's kind of what you want.
Yeah. And it is what I wanted. And if I had played this first, I probably would have found it super fun. I do find it super fun. It's just, it's really difficult to play it back to back with Mario Odyssey.
Right.
Yeah. So that's not a slight against New Super Lucky's Tale. The developers certainly didn't know I was going to consume it that way. It's just, I think I want it to be a little bit more. I want it maybe just to feel a little tougher sometimes. Like I feel like I should have to work a little harder for some of these collectibles. There's, it doesn't hurt for variety, which I think is fun. Which is the thing I think Odyssey did really well too, is that you'll get, little portals that you can zip into that will transform Lucky into like a 2D puzzle platformer instead of a 3D open world one, which again feels very much like Odyssey. There's actual like puzzle levels where there's a recurring in-game like chess game that you have to play. And the little fox runs up and he swipes his tail at the chess piece and it slides across the board. And you have to sort of move them to strategic places on the board, and it unlocks collectibles and upgrades and stuff like that. And those get progressively harder as you go. But even at their hardest, I'm kind of getting them on the first try. So I don't mean to brag about my ability here, but so it's fun. It does the right stuff. It just does not seem to be putting up a huge fight. So, if I was a parent and I had little kids around, or if I'm new to gaming, or if I just don't like super challenging games and like to sort of breeze through them, which I generally am that kind of gamer, this is kind of right up my alley.
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever sort of stumbled my way into a game only to realize, like, oh, I think this is for children. I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the thing that it sort of reminds me most of is Ukulele.
Oh yeah,
There were
it looks
two
a little
Ukulele
bit,
games.
but
The first one was more of a Banjo-Kazooie kind of open world 3D thing. It was okay. The second one, I forget what the second Banjo, because I'm sorry, I forget what the second Ukulele was subtitled, but it's really good, and it sort of again kind of evokes the vibe of a '90s mascot platformer, but it also remembers that those games can be quite devilish at times. And it puts up a fight. There are really tough levels in that Ukulele game, and I really like that game. I played quite a bit of that. I should Google that for the sake of our listeners. But yeah, New Super Lucky's Tale really just sort of like lets go of the friction and just creates this kind of like warm, cozy, cute, funny world that barely puts up a fight for you. And, you just kind of stroll through it. Yeah. Again, they made the game they want to make. I almost sort of wish it had a bit of some accessibility features where I could sort of crank up some of the difficulty a little bit sometimes.
Make it harder. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not this game. That's some other game. New Super Lucky's Tale is I think content to be the thing that it is. And, again, if you have a child in your life or somebody who's just kind of getting into gaming, maybe this is the thing for them.
Oh, that's cool. It's maybe a nice little break as you, continue to bash your head against these Mario Odyssey challenges.
Yes. Yeah. I can't give up on that. I'm so close.
Yeah, got to do it. You got a couple weeks left.
So that's New Super Lucky's Tale. I'm playing that on the Switch. The other game that I am currently playing on the Switch is Paranormasight, subtitled The Seven Mysteries of Honjo.
What are the seven mysteries?
How
many of the seven mysteries have you solved, rather?
I don't know if it's that kind of game. I don't think you're trying to solve all seven mysteries.
Yeah.
This is a pretty hard right turn from Fade to Black and New Super Lucky's Tale in that it is a visual novel. And it's way more of a horror visual novel than I think I was expecting. I mean, it's got paranorm in the title, so I guess I should have expected it. But the first time that something surprisingly gruesome happens, I was like, whoa, I didn't know that I was playing this kind of game. Yeah. But it is, as maybe you would expect, I would expect from a visual novel, it's very text heavy. It's a lot of standing around, clicking on things, interacting with people, and just moving the conversation along. You think you're done and you're ready to move on to the next thing, but then you click on the person again and there's 10 more things you can choose from in terms of dialogue.
Stuff to say. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot. The game is really smart about giving you a check mark next to your list of topics you can discuss when you've discussed all of the things under that subcategory. But sometimes you'll get the check and then 3 more things you can discuss. And I'm like, I just want to move on to the next thing. I don't want to talk to you all day.
I'm tired of hearing about these mysteries.
So the hook here is that the game starts with you sort of being a young guy out on a date in Japan, and it turns out your date is kind of into the paranormal. She's kind of a cool, spooky chick. Wow. And she's taken you to a park where there is one of these 7 mysteries is supposed to sort of happen. There's supposed to be a curse or a ghost or something that lives in the park.
So it's kind of intense for a first date, I feel like.
It's a little intense for the first date, yes. And he is naturally sort of surprised by this, but is kind of into it, and kind of plays along with her. And from there, the story goes places. It is at its sort of grandest scale, kind of about how these 7 dark mysteries sort of live within kind of the facade of 1980s Japan. Oh. You will, over the course of the game, hop between a number of different characters, and sort of personify them in their pursuit of one of these 7 mysteries. Sometimes the stories overlap. At some point in the game, you get kind of an interesting feature that feels like a timeline where you can go from, it's actually set up like little TV screens, in different ways that these characters' stories kind of segment that if you make a choice, you'll go off a certain path. And if you don't necessarily sort of like the outcome there, or it bisects with another character's path in a way that feels unfortuitous, you can go back to the previous place in the timeline and make different decisions and go a different direction. So it turns into a bit more of a choose your own adventure than I think I was expecting it to be. It certainly didn't feel like that in its first couple of hours. And then boom, this extra thing was kind of presented where it's sort of like, oh no, you're 7 characters and you're all going to interact. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Kind of doing some heavy lifting from a story perspective here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm being a little cagey because I don't want to give away too much of the kind of the overarching mystery here, and more or less sort of focusing on kind of how it mechanically operates. But yeah, that sort of mechanic has been kind of the biggest friction point for me so far, is that I kind of
really
do a little bit more. I feel like in a lot of ways I'm just sort of like thumbing through text prompts and like say the next thing, and then they say the response, and I hit the button again and say. And in fact, there's a setting in this where you can just move to one-handed controls. That you don't have to use both sticks. You can do a setting in the menu to just control it with the right thing, and you're kind of like X to move to the next conversation, X to the move to the next conversation. You can move the stick to look around the environment sometimes, but your character essentially stands in one place and just spins in a circle. You don't actually walk around and explore and talk to different people or anything. So you're just thumbing through dialogue prompts, and it's a little boring.
A little dry. So what are you doing when you're looking around? Is that, like last week you had mentioned some pixel hunting. Is that a thing?
A lot of pixel hunting. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a scenario I was playing just tonight, actually, before we recorded, where I thought I had done all the things. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't letting me go on to the next chapter of the mystery, why I couldn't sort of wrap up this scenario. And it turns out there was just this tiny little spot on the screen that I didn't put the magnifying glass over to like prompt some observation about some blurry thing in the environment, that a character would like, blah, 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 say some dialogue about, and then it would let me go on to the next thing. So yeah, there is unfortunately some pixel hunting built into this.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Seems, well, I was going to say it's like standard fare for adventure games, but stuff you've been talking about recently has shown that that's not necessarily a given. Is it required? I mean, you said it's required to progress. Can you like get a game over in this, or is it you just get stuck at points because you haven't found the thing to the next object you need to inspect yet?
You can have unfortunate endings.
Okay.
Where a character will have a negative outcome, but there is a mechanism beyond the timeline, a feature that I mentioned built into the game that allows you to sort of like try a different approach.
Okay, so you just go back to the choose your own adventure segment of it.
Kinda, but there is some other thing built into the narrative, like let's say like a host character essentially. Mm-hmm. That if you have kind of an unfortunate ending, it will go to this other character, and they're like, "Oh, they didn't quite go the way you thought it would, did it? Let's try again, but keep in mind this little hint or this other thing."
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of interesting in that way. I think the game in general is doing a lot of really interesting things, but it's also doing some really kind of boring and mundane things. So while I'm kind of into the mystery and I'm into the characters a little bit, I like that it has sort of this interesting flex in being quite like spooky and quite sort of seriously, with a foot firmly placed in the world of horror quite a bit. And that is surprising as it happens, because much of the other games sort of feels like, again, you're just kind of thumbing through some dialogue and interviewing people and talking to people and stuff. And then something creepy happens. And it really sells the creepiness. I think it does a good job of owning that. Yeah, and I think there's some interesting narrative stuff with this timeline feature and the way that stories can kind of branch in different directions. I like all of that stuff. It's just, I really wish like people could be a little more like efficient with their dialogue. That is the part that just sort of feels like, oh God, I can't sit here and thumb through 20 minutes of more conversation with this character.
It's just not very well written, or it's not interesting.
It's just not super interesting. It doesn't all feel relevant either, particularly in a game where you have the ability to kind of like essentially rewind and choose alternate paths. You end up going through some of that stuff more than once. And there doesn't feel like there's a lot of efficiencies built into like scrubbing through it and getting quicker about it. So I don't know if at some point we'll get like a Paranormasight Game of the Year edition that has like a fast forward button, but it could benefit a little bit from that. It does feel like there's a lot of exposition that doesn't always feel super necessary. And I think, maybe a tighter localization, a tighter edit on some of the dialogue and scenarios in this game would make it feel like a much more efficient and kind of breezier murder mystery kind of thing.
You want the Cliff's Notes version?
I feel like a lot of me is like, just sum it up, guys. Just get to the point, because I'm tired of talking to you right now.
I wonder if that's like, I mean, I don't know why that is. Maybe that's what some people show up for, but I feel that way about the Yakuza games. As much as I love those games, I'm just like, oh my god, how long has this conversation been going on? Why couldn't they have just said what they need to say like 5 minutes ago? And in those, like, the performances are always very good, but somehow they just still manage to feel very drawn out.
Yeah. I think I remember having some of that experience with Yakuza 7 as well.
Oh yeah, the opening couple of hours of that game are especially sort of infamous for that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Paranormasight definitely kind of owns that as well. Again, I think it is more of a visual novel than it is an adventure game. So, novels are lengthy, are robust reading experiences. This is not a short story. It's not a visual short story. It's a visual novel. And yeah, so I think it feels like that from a length standpoint, that you do get a lot of exposition, and it just, unfortunately, from a player's perspective, it doesn't all feel super relevant.
Maybe you were just not in the Paranormasight mindset coming into this, because as you were describing it, I was like, this sounds great. Maybe I want to play this. It's been a while since I played something that was just a serious kind of like the visual novel experience.
Yeah, this has been getting some positive reviews. That's kind of what led me to it, as I had read a few things on Twitter and opinions from other gamers that whose opinions I trust, that this was kind of cool and a pretty unique kind of story-based experience. And I see all of that. I see what, those players saw, and I do find it to be sort of a compelling package. I'm struggling with getting through just the length of some of these interactions. It doesn't feel super respectful of my time. Yeah.
Well, that's too bad. I've heard kind of, I think generally positive things about this, but I didn't know quite what to think of it. I'm kind of curious, though.
Yeah. So if any of this sounds compelling to our listeners, this is called Paranormasight, The Seven Mysteries of Honjo. It is, I'm playing it on the Switch. I'm not sure if it's on other platforms.
I just looked it up, and it's on at least like mobile, which is interesting. It's like, do I want to play this on my phone? Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, that might be a kind of an interesting way to consume it.
Yeah.
I have noticed that it does have touchscreen like functionality turned on, that you can kind of tap through dialogue options and stuff like that, which is good. It sort of feels kind of perfectly built for a mobile experience. So maybe that's the way to do it.
Just pull it out every few minutes while you're at the bus stop.
Yeah. Does anyone take the bus? Do you take the bus to work?
Oh, every day I'm just hanging out at the bus stop, wishing I had something to play on my phone.
Well, have I got a deal for you?
No, lately I've been back into desert golfing, which is not
excellent.
a thing that, like, I love that game. It's actually an incredibly well-designed game, but I feel like it is just a bottomless pit. It's like the perfect thing. I would always play it when I would like go to Japan, just be on the metro, because it's so simple. But at the same time, I'm not like, oh, someday I'll get to the end of this game, and you approach it like very differently than any other game. But I've been thinking like, oh, why am I playing this? It just reminds me of being on public transportation.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I hear it. I'm looking through my phone right now, and I honestly don't think I have any mobile games installed on my phone right now.
None. Oh, well.
No. I did an app refresh and a purge not too long ago, and I remember
Okay.
deleting some of the stuff that had just been sitting there for a long time that I haven't touched in a while. But yeah, I don't really currently have a mobile fixation.
Yeah. I had to get rid of a bunch of my... I mean, I reset my phone also last year, and I never bothered to put a bunch of games back onto it. So really just desert golfing and Hatsune Miku once in a while.
Sage Solitaire. I think that was my last fixation. I did that when I had COVID. That was all I had, like, the energy to do is sit in bed and thumb through that for my while I was convalescing. And then I got Sarah hooked on it, and her and I were like comparing high scores and stuff like that with each other. But like anything, you kind of lose interest and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, now I'm thinking like maybe I should check this out because it was kind of on my list.
I'm sorry, Paranormasight, you mean?
Paranormasight, yeah. It's still weird to me getting into a game that's more than like 5 minutes long on a phone. But maybe I'll give it a try. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's also weird to me, the thought of sitting down in front of my Switch and playing a visual novel. Like maybe it does suit kind of the mobile experience better.
I don't know that I've played a lot of games that sort of fit into the category of a visual novel. I've certainly played a fair share of adventure games. Quite a bit in the past year or so that I've talked about on the show. But this sort of, I think, definitely sort of embraces its kind of novel structure.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't mind reading in games. I like subtitled movies and things like that. So I don't have an objection to reading. It's just it's not what I want to do when I play a video game. I think I want generally a little more, agency, a little more involvement. I want to be challenged, maybe just a little bit more. And Paranormasight doesn't necessarily feel like that, and until you get to the luxury of being able to kind of alternate some of the timelines and make some of the different decisions, and then you feel, I as a player feel a little more involved, a little more challenged.
Yeah, I think there's there's a whole spectrum of things that are considered to be visual novels. I think originally they were just you push a button to advance the text, and there's like not even really cutscenes, but there's a visual aspect of it as you're going through this novel. But now it's expanded to include stuff like 13 Sentinels, which sounds like compared to this, it sounds much lighter on the text. And then also there are just like RTS sequences where you have mech battles. So I mean that's kind of
Paranormasight could benefit from some mech battles.
Yeah, you should just drop a few of those in there. That would liven things up.
That's one of the mysteries. Is there's a giant mech
why are there all these mechs? Yeah, but I constantly hear that referred to as a visual novel.
Interesting.
When there's actually much more going on in that game. So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Maybe there's just enough interaction in this to keep me interested on my phone. Who knows?
Yeah. Are you familiar with the games Corpse Party?
I've heard of them. I haven't played any of those.
I had a couple of those, I think, on the Vita or PSP, and I like those. Again, sort of like super creepy horror, blood dripping down the walls games. But I remember there being, again, them sort of being kind of entrenched in the visual novel, genre. But there was an exploration element of that. Again, it's been a while since I've played one, but I think I remember sort of walking around a school and exploring and looking in different rooms, and then you'd get like pages and pages of text and interaction while you're talking to another character, and then you're exploring and doing stuff again. So I think there's mechanisms that developers can use to kind of break up some of that monotony and make it feel less like you're reading a book and just a little bit more like you're doing something kind of video gamey. And yeah, maybe that's my objection to sort of the structure of Paranormasight is I want it to feel a little more gamey.
All right. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I have been really curious to try something that is just the reading experience. I don't know what you would call it. Just like the pure, like more traditional visual novel, just because I haven't really had that exact experience. Everything I've played sort of in that category has had some kind of gameplay at some point.
Right.
But maybe I'll warm up with some Paranormasight and then see where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my perspective on this is if any of this sounds interesting, you give it a shot. It's, I think it does enough kind of cool and interesting things to be a recommend. It's just obviously with the caveat that you're gonna read a lot of text.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I sound very anti-reading. I'm pro-reading.
I know.
I like
You're
reading
just
books.
Why is there so much reading in this game?
Like,
When do I
could someone
get to
read it
shoot
to
somebody?
me? Could somebody act out the characters? That'd be fantastic.
Is it voice acted or it's just all text?
No, there's no voice acting. It's just text.
Okay, interesting.
No. Cool. So I don't know what else is next. I mean, we're so close at this point to Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know where I go from here. I think I do want to stick with Paranormasight. Do want to plug away at a little more Super Lucky's Tale, but
Yeah, get that 100%.
I really need to wrap up Mario. I think
I want to hear about that game.
Where I spend my time. Yeah. All right. Well, I better get on that. We should wrap this thing up, I guess. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. You should hang out with us on Discord and chat about video games and pop culture stuff. And geez, what were we talking about recently? Flea market finds and
get your recipe for like Gatorade bread.
Yes, yeah.
Which actually looked amazing.
It did look delicious.
Like,
yes.
I kind of want the Gatorade bread.
It doesn't sound appetizing, but it looks like a lovely loaf of bread.
It's got all the ingredients you use to make bread, so why wouldn't it be amazing?
Plus Gatorade.
Plus, well, yeah.
Which sounds like a very what was that movie with Brondo? It's got what plants need.
Oh yeah, Idiocracy.
Idiocracy, yeah. So yeah, join us on Discord. Go to VGHangover.com. There is a link there that will get you into our little clubhouse.
Yeah.
We would encourage you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. And maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show as well.
Yeah. Help us get the word out. Pull in some new listeners, get their recipes for Gatorade bread. It's great.
Excellent.
We want to give thanks again to Carl Brueggemann for our intro and outro music this week. If you'd like to hear more of his stuff, head over to carlbmusic.bandcamp.com. That's Carl with a K. Oh, it's probably Bandcamp Friday this week, right? First of the month.
I can't confirm, but it typically is the first Friday of the month. So yeah, we're coming up on it.
Okay, well, at some point, head over to carlbmusic.bandcamp.com, add all of his albums to your cart, and just hit checkout, and you'll have a great weekend listening to more of his stuff.
Cool. Until next week, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.